Yeah, I guess sounds good. I'd like to thank you all for joining me at the main event. Andrew and I already did a dress rehearsal over at Tracyton. Hopefully my voice will hold up. I'm not used to doing this much public speaking, but I have faith. Last time I gave a sermon here, I started with the screw tape letters. And I didn't know at the time that Greg was going to do an entire sermon series over Lent from wardrobes and rings. And wouldn't you know it, this week's section from wardrobes and rings is from the screw tape letters. So we're going to dive in again, but that's okay because they're pretty good. So for a little refresher for you, the screw tape letters, C.S. Lewis has taken on the persona of a senior demon named Screwtape, who is offering advice to different junior demons about how to tempt, befuddle, and otherwise trip up people and make their lives a little the worse for it. By anthropomorphizing our temptation, and for all you non-communication majors, anthropomorphizing just means making something non-human into a human-like persona. So by anthropomorphizing our tempter like this and making this demon Screwtape, C.S. Lewis, I think, makes it a lot easier for us to understand the ways that good and decent people will get tripped up into selfishness, apathy, greed, so on and so on. The section we're called to in this week's Wardrobe and Rings is on the nature of time, living in the past versus the present versus the future. Screwtape, giving his demonic advice, says that the past is frozen and no longer flows, right? It's done. No matter how many mistakes you made yesterday, you cannot go back and unmake them. In the future, it inflames hope or fear, but the present is the moment that touches eternity. That is, the present is the only moment in which you are capable of experiencing joy, love, God. So Screwtape counsels, your man has been accustomed to, ever since he was a boy, having dozens of incompatible philosophies dancing together inside of his head. He doesn't think about doctrines as being primarily true or false, but rather academic versus practical, outworn versus contemporary, conventional or ruthless. Your business is to fix his attention on the stream. Teach him to call it real life, and don't let him ask what he means by real. It's far better to make them live in the future. The future inflames hope and fear. Fix his attention on the stream and call it real life. Swap out the word stream for feed, and that is the exact business model of Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and about half of the rest of the internet, am I right? So I guess that means Screwtape has been doing a good job lately, because we are constantly being fed a stream of information about anything in the world, so long as it's not what's happening right here, right now. Some of that information is stressing. With the US and Israel beginning another war, has anyone done any doom scrolling this weekend? Right, so some of it causes stress and worry and anxiety, and then we need to find ourselves a nice little outlet, so maybe we look at cat gifs, or has anyone seen the video of the monkey whose only friend is a stuffed monkey? And then some of that information from the stream is actually useful information. Okay, one more show of hands. Who's ever gone down a Wikipedia rabbit hole? Started looking up one thing, and then like 4 hours later, you're like, okay, now I know all about Screech's life from Saved by the Bell? Not sure how I got there. And you know what? It is good to be informed on current events. It's good to occasionally enjoy seeing some cute things. And it's good to do some self-guided learning on Wikipedia or books, if you're still one of those kinds of people. But it's not great to constantly be absorbing all of this never-ending stream and call it real life. If you're watching TV and eating dinner and have an eye on your phone, you're not really in any of those places. You're not really savoring your food. You're probably going to miss a few plot points in your TV show. In fact, Netflix knows this. So that you don't ever get confused looking at your phone, miss something important in the show, and then go, I don't know what's happening, and turn it off. They've now started making shows more boring on purpose just to keep you in the stream. So if you're got the TV on, you got your phone on, you're eating dinner, you are not any of those places. You're not even absorbing the information from your phone, right? 3 more things in the feed and you've forgotten what 4 things ago was. This is not a recipe for a better life. This is a recipe for anxiety, apathy, burnout, and inaction. And our tormentor, Screwtape here, knew it even before we had all of these things. C.S. Lewis first published this book in 1942. There was no internet, there were no cell phones, and while TV had been invented, he wasn't exactly surrounded by TV junkies. He lived outside of Oxford, England, and up to that point, England had exactly one TV network, the BBC. And even that was only in London, and it didn't air all day long. So in his little rural area of Headington Quarry, he wouldn't have even been able to get TV. Not that it much mattered, because like I said, he wrote this in 1942. And due to World War II, the BBC, the one TV network in all of England, stopped broadcasting in 1939 and didn't resume again until 1946 when the war was over. So the whole time he's writing the Screwtape letters, and when they go to be published, there's not even TV. He certainly could not have known that here in our present we'd have 600 cable channels broadcasting 24/7, a dozen streaming services with millions of hours of content available on demand, a whole internet of everything you've ever wanted to know in your pocket or on your computer or on your tablet or now for some reason on your fridge. Anyone, show of hands, have a smart fridge with a screen built in? Well, no one's admitting to it. That's nice. So a quick little aside here. A while back, I went to a regular checkup at my doctor. And while the nurse was getting my vitals before the doctor came in, she asked if I had filled out the anxiety and depression questionnaire that Kaiser has you fill out from time to time. When I said no, she reached up to grab one. Now, she's at that little nurse's station, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. It's a little portable table with a laptop on it. Not a lot of room. There was only room for 3 different stacks of paper on top. And one of them was an anxiety and depression questionnaire. And I remember being so struck by that at the time. You know, Kaiser is not only a doctor, is your insurance company too, right? And you know how much insurance companies love forms? For it to be one of the 3 most important forms that they have right there, I thought that was wild. And so I kind of jokingly said that to the nurse. I was like, man, people must have a lot of anxiety and depression lately if one of the 3 most important forms you have to grab this often is for anxiety and depression. But she didn't kind of jokingly, go, yeah. She kind of looked at me with the same look Erica looks after she comes home at a day at school where a kid has tried to flush his shoes down the toilet for some reason. Like just this knowing, yeah, people have a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. But it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, with everything that's going on in this world, with every company vying for our attention so hard that they're putting ads not just in our TVs, but on our phones, on our car GPS screens, on our smart refrigerator screens that thankfully none of us have. And it's not just ads, but incompatible philosophies dancing around our heads, like Screwtape said. Bombing Iran is great. Bombing Iran is terrible. It will lead to World War III. It'll be over next week because we've already got the Ayatollah. The rest of the world is with us, but no, our allies didn't participate or say that they supported it. ICE are terrorists. No, ICE are capturing terrorists. No, neither are terrorists. It's just the news trying to get your clicks. It's not that big a deal. But wait, 60 people have already died in ICE custody this year, and it's only March 1st. Incompatible philosophies dancing around our head. That's just 2 of them, and I've barely scratched the surface, and it's enough to make you wish that we had communion wine instead of communion grape juice. Amen? Is it any wonder that it's so hard for us just to be present, to not worry about these things, other world events, what's going on in your kid's school, whether or not you'll get a raise enough to cover inflation? Will you ever be able to afford a house? Will you have time to fix up the house you already have? And on it goes. What can a person even do? I'll give you some advice I heard from a psychiatrist once speaking to a room full of people on the subject of anxiety. The words she said I repeat in my head pretty often when I get overwhelmed with it all. Be present in the moment without judgment. Be present in the moment without judgment. A couple quick more shows of hands. How many people here make it a habit not to look at their phone during church? And keep your hands up if during church is the only time you make it a habit to not check your phone during the week. And then finally, how many of you feel better, more fulfilled, or less anxious when you're at church or in the afternoon when you leave church? It's not a coincidence. I mean, don't get me wrong. Not being on your phone isn't the only reason to go to church. I looked this up in preparation for my sermon. It turns out people have been getting something out of going to church for longer than the last 25 years or so that we've all had cell phones. Who knew? But I promise you, while it's not the only reason to go to church, if you do make it a habit to be present in the moment and without judgment, like you do at church, other times throughout your week, you will feel better, more refreshed, and more able to take on all of these things that cause us worry. Now, let me make a few things clear, because I know some of you are probably wondering if I'm saying never live in the past, never live in the future, only live in the present. I'm not saying that you should skip your history classes, that there's nothing in the last 200,000 years worth knowing, or that you don't have to worry about the future and figure out if you're going to have groceries. I'm not saying any of those things. To just live in the moment like that is simply a recipe for self-centered hedonism. It's not what we're called to do. The band Oingo Boingo once took a page from C.S. Lewis's book and ironically proposed, better dumb and happy than smart and without any friends. Better cute and better loud, better join up with the crowd. And yeah, there are people like that. They don't worry about all of these things. They don't worry about the victims of war, the victims of oppression, or ask why their $5.52 piece of fast fashion clothing they just got from China was so cheap, whether it was made with slave labor, whether people were treated with dignity. They only think, wow, this is so now. And then when it stops being now and starts being so last season, they just get rid of those clothes without wondering where they're going to end up and get the next piece of fast fashion without wondering where that came from either. They don't think about the people involved. They don't think about the people that don't have clothes. They're just in the now. So we're not called to be that. That is not what the Bible asks of us. The Bible says that God is love, and that if you claim to love God who you cannot see, but don't love other people whom you can see, then you're a liar. And that's not me talking, that's Jesus. So if you don't like it, take it up with him. We should think about bigger things than just that one moment, being cute. And if that sounds contradictory to what I've been saying, let me go back to C.S. Lewis here. He went on in the Screwtape Letters to point out that knowledge from the past is good. It's useful, but we experience that knowledge presently. So for example, when I was in college, I did a lot of learning. I gained a lot of knowledge. And when I recall that knowledge, I don't have to sit and dwell about all of the sleepless nights I had to pull because I was a procrastinator, so I always waited the night before an exam or a big paper. I'm not thinking about that. I'm just reusing that knowledge, hopefully a little bit for my betterment. Maybe today on this sermon, a little bit for your betterment. We'll find out. So we use the past, but we use it for today's benefit. And I'm not telling you to avoid the future entirely either. Don't sell your 401k and buy a sweet car. Not telling you to do that. I'm just saying don't live in the future. I might have a lot of thoughts about the year 2028, but I don't live in the year 2028. Not yet, anyway. I have to think about the future in so much as I can help make the world a better place. In fact, the demon Screwtape goes on in the Screwtape Letters to say, to be sure, the enemy, by which he means God, wants people to think of the future too, but just so much as is necessary for planning acts of justice and charity. So that leaves us with a few important questions today to ask ourselves. Here now in church, afterwards during our potluck, looking forward to the chicken wings, throughout the week, as I'm looking forward just a little bit here, we want to ask ourselves, how can we experience God's love to the fullest? If God is love, and we are called to be God in the world as Christians. How can we experience this manifesting of God's love? Not because of something I did in the past to make me worthy, not because I care so much about helping homeless people at some point in the future when I have time, and then I'll be, good and worthy. But here, now, as you are loved by God and are called to be love in the world. How can you do that? How can you experience that love, and how can you manifest that love? And if that's not a big enough question to ask you, I'm going to ask it also of us as the church community, the church with a capital C. How can we be that love in the world? Part of the answer to those questions I'm going to give to you, because that's just part of giving a sermon. And part of the answer I'm going to leave up to you to figure out, because that's part of hearing a sermon. So Screwtape, he gives some advice. And I think the best place for us to start is whenever he zigs, we zag. Whatever he says, we do the opposite. So Screwtape says, we want a whole race perpetually in the pursuit of the rainbow's end, never honest, nor kind, nor happy now, but always using as mere fuel wherewith to heap the altar of the future every real gift which is offered to them in the present. Right? So he's saying, make people think about, I'll just be happy once I have that new car, or when I can afford a house, or when I can finally have time to finish fixing up the house I have now, and it goes on, and you're never happy in the moment. We should do the opposite. We should do, as I learned, to be present in the moment without judgment. You may have heard it said that comparison is the thief of joy, and I'm here to tell you that it's true. If you want to experience the good things in your life, don't compare yourself to others, but don't compare yourself either to the past, to your past self. Don't sit around thinking, man, when I was younger, I was so much better looking. I was in so much better shape. And when I got off the couch, I didn't go, ugh. That isn't going to make you feel any better, and it's not going to make you happier, more contented, or more able to love your neighbor here in the present. It's just going to make you sad. So how can we, the church, be Christ in the world? So when people hear that you're Christian, they don't just think, that means you hate gay people or trans people or Palestinians or refugees, or fill in the blank of whatever complaint you've heard about Christians, or maybe complaints you've made about Christians. How can we manifest God's love in the world? You've probably heard that old parable of the beach that's covered with a bunch of stranded starfish. Miles, as far as the eye can see, there's just all of these starfish that have washed up on the beach, stranded, unable to get back into the water. And this young man, he sees an older woman kind of slowly but surely walking down the beach, picking them up one by one and throwing them back in the ocean. And he says to her, well, surely you can't expect to make a difference. There's miles, there's hundreds of thousands of these things. You're not going to make a difference. And she kind of smiles, picks one up, throws it back, and says, made a difference to that one. Let me tell you why this is kind of a B grade parable and not one of the parables that Jesus told that are A grade. If we as the church acted in love, not just me going out to try to get those starfish, but if all of the Christians in the world went out and instead of trying to make the world look like how we think the world should look, future, but lived in the present and manifested God's love to our neighbors now, then when we see this beach full of starfish, we could say to all of those people that we have acted in love with, hey, there's a crisis going down at the beach. We need to go down there and help out. And there'd be so many of us that no one would even think to say, oh, surely you can't make a difference. And we wouldn't have to console ourselves with only making a difference to that one. There'd be so many of us, we'd each only have to throw in like 3 starfish, and then we could all break for lunch. That is a better response for the church. I mean, think about it. There is enough food in this world for everyone. There's enough water in this world for everyone. There's enough medicine that we can give basic health care to everyone. And this is new in human history. Modern humans emerged about 200,000 years ago, and for the last 200,000 years, there hasn't been enough food. There hasn't been enough clean water. There hasn't been enough health care, shelter, or clothing. But now, there is. Unfortunately, our brains are slow to learn. We've had 200,000 years, and prior to that, of biological necessity. I need to look after me and mine. There isn't going to be enough to go around. And now, for the first time in human history, there's enough to go around, but still, people starve. Still, people die because they don't have access to clean water. Still, there's oppression on this earth. There are roughly, I looked it up, about 2.4 billion Christians on this planet. And if we all practiced God's radical, unearned, unending love, because remember, God's love is not earned. It says very clearly, there's nothing we can do to earn God's love, to be worthy of God's love, to deserve God's love. It is given anyway. And it is given freely, and freely you should give. So if the 2.4 billion Christians on this planet acted with such radical, unending, unearned love to the other roughly 8.2 billion people, that's only 3 other people, right? We're more than a quarter of the planet. Do you know how hard it is to act with love toward 3 people? It's not that hard. I'm actually going to make it 4 because you need to act with love toward yourself as well. And some of you might worry, well, if we do that, if we spend too much time giving to others, there won't be enough for me. That's your old wired scarcity brain talking. I'm telling you now, there will be enough for you. I mean, after all, there's enough for the birds in the sky and the lilies in the field, am I right? So I'll add one thing to the verse that I heard. Be present in the moment and go in love. Amen. Now we will